Again, did it overflow?
Check 1 2, check 1 2. Audio check 1 2.
And then you also need to clean up here. All the empty cans that you're hiding everywhere. Why are you so on edge?
I'm just trying to do something.
Calm down.
You're doing your stuff. I'm doing my stuff. Conversation done.
Thanks for your help, though.
Yeah. Easier to but so now I can talk.
I don't know. I don't know. No, I think our talk is in the audio too. Probably should mute the microphone. It's for people watching. It's two people. It's Brian and me.
What's your thing? Does that look great? Thanks, people. Okay, shut up now. That's enough. Our next presenter, are we ready? Silence, please. Our next presenter needs no introduction. Well, actually, he does, because he never gets one. He's the 97-year-old president of the American Institute of Architects. Sorry, I am the 97th incumbent of said prestigious distinction. Woo! Round of applause. When I was a snotty-nosed kindergartner in our hallowed and historical hometown of Knaresborough, North Yorkshire, as at the time he was the prefect of King James School, readying to embark on a distinguished international career. By chance, decades later, we reconnected in the American Midwest, united by a passion bordering on violence and certainly foul language for the greatest soccer team of all time. Leeds. Leeds. That guy. Boo! Leeds United. Yes. We also share a penchant for decent beer, although I think I've seen him drinking Stella, and a mutual admiration for over-the-top British metal band Darkness, among other, among other post-colonial heroes. Honestly, I think tonight, Cass. He's one of my dearest and most deeply sarcastic pals. A lovely, extraordinarily thoughtful philanthropist. In fact, I'm wearing one of the football socks Peter bequeathed to me on an important birthday. He couldn't find the other one. She's a good chick. Is this mic on? He's the co-CEO of the iconoclastic Architecture's Fund, alongside Lady Shea. Some French guy who remains the ominous police, together with other more exotic hues of PechaKucha Chicago. Please welcome the one, and tonight, thanks to you lot, not so lovely, Sir Peter Passion. All right, let's hit it right. In 1966, American artist Edward Shea mounted a motorized Nikon to the back of a pickup truck and generated two 24-foot-long continuous photographic views of a 1.5 mile section of a landmark stretch of West Hollywood, one for each side of the thoroughfare in his seminal book, Every Building on the Sunset Strip. 6 years later, Yale University architecture students and their professors Denise Scott Brown, Robert Venturi, and Steve Eisner replicated the exercise on their Learning from Las Vegas studio and subsequent book. I've always wanted to do some version of this, and during the pandemic, I took this opportunity. Absent a motorized Nikon or a pickup truck, my elongated panoramas are hand-drawn streets of real places as you've never seen them. One side of my street depicts a compilation of landmarks, monuments, and works of architecture present in my life at formative moments. The opposite side, a selection of works from a quarter century of practice as an architect. The journey begins in Yorkshire, my childhood home. River rocks were carved during the Dacian glacial period and were about 5 miles from the home I grew up in, Ocken Farm, a small stone farmstead dating back to the early 18th century. Next is Porta Pia, named for Pope Pius IV. It was originally designed by Michelangelo on the Aurelian walls of Rome in 1561. A photograph of this appears on the cover of Robert Venturi's book, Complexity and Contradiction in Architecture, a book in the collection of every architect of my generation. Here are two more gateways. One on the right, the arches at Newcastle University, the gateway to the architectural quadrangle where I spent 3 formative years, and on the left, the White Horse Tavern in Newport, Rhode Island, where I was married and the oldest continuously operating public house in America. Every child of the 60s feels a kinship with the Apollo program. It's the Saturn V rocket that launched Armstrong, Collins, and Aldrin next to a thrusting John Hancock Tower, the finest and boldest landscape of hometown landscape. That kid of the 60s watched a lot of American television in Yorkshire, and this sign featured prominently in many murder mysteries. Like Porta Pia, it's another portal into a complex and seductive city. It's also fun to draw. In 1984, I met my mentor, Steve Eisner, a Philadelphia architect, co-author of Learning from Las Vegas, and co-architect of Franklin Court in Philadelphia. This ghost of Ben Franklin's demolished and long-lost home is one of my favorite buildings, or non-buildings, and massively intrigued and inspired me as a young architect. And for those of you familiar with Boston, this behemoth, Rose Walk, is the building I spent an entire year drawing windows and bathroom tile details in my first job at Steve Morris in Merrill in the mid-80s. It's another gateway of monumental proportions, and thought appear likely fits quite comfortably under its grand arch and dome. So much for influences. Here's the work of architecture is fun. Here's a Burger King in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Early adopters of Macintosh computers will recognize this enormous furry dog's resemblance to one of the characters in hyper-card programming language. My first completed building is the Exploration Station in Bourbonnais, just around the bend in the Kankakee River from Frank Lloyd Wright's Bradley House. It's a group of little barns on a former farm that's now a Park District project. The panorama has a whole series of artifacts hidden within it. These not so discreet trees recall erector sets that fascinated me as a child and that I've scaled up here. We'll find these in a couple of architecture's fun projects, but these ones are notably from St. Chrysostom's Day School on Dearborn Parkway. When I worked with Steve Eisenhower in Philadelphia, a daily ritual in the afternoon was rubber band target practice. We had a fine little set of animal targets when we were on fire at each other, one of which I scaled up out of 1.5-inch plate steel, and this 8-foot tall chicken lives with similarly whopping farm animals just up I-95 in Lindenhurst and Romeo. Here's a kit of parts from the Mid-Michigan Children's Museum in Saginaw and the DuPage Children's Museum in Naperville. One of the luxuries of my hand-drawn panorama is reflecting on a main street of buildings across a series of communities. I like to think that these projects have influenced buildings for younger architects everywhere, and hopefully they'll turn into productive citizens and patrons of architecture. This tree trunk is from the Pritzker Family Children's Zoo, one of the greatest free things in our city. And here, almost finally, is a Ronald McDonald house in Oak Lawn, just on the south side here. Coincidentally, the topic of my very first PechaKucha Night presentation from this stage 14 years ago. We've been doing this for 14 years. Can you imagine? Wraps up with a modest pavilion that resembles a Kokishi doll. It's actually an art studio and printmaking workshop near Fort Lauderdale, and it's actually full of a display of much smaller Japanese dolls. It's very charming. So the pastime of pandemic unleashed the creativity that many of us have seen this evening in different ways. For me, a collection of fantastic places that have been important to me, and I hope a collection of places that had an impact in communities across the country. Appropriately enough, this indulgent drawing is immortalized on another project in a time of COVID. Shea and I worked on a new book on the processes and things that influence architecture's fun and the outcomes that come about. Thanks for letting me share this. You're so generous. Walter Street, who was supposed to come right after the beer break, but I know got otherwise distracted, has handed me a biography. I have a biography here, penned by me. Votes for this one? Peter! Votes for this one. So a cursory, this is not going to be as long as one of Michael Jackson's epics. An epic is an epic we use loosely. A cursory glance at the internet will inform you that Walter Street III is a product manager at PlayStation in Los Angeles. The Walter Street you will meet tonight, however, is a native of Baltimore and an architect with a long and respected history in Chicago. Like many of those who grace the PK stage, he's an activist first and foremost. Walter Street, my friend. I don't recognize the usual. Someone told me about a year ago, before we hit this storm, that PKI was planning to do might not be well. Well, as it turns out, it has become more relevant. Our foundational documents stated that all men are created equal. Men. The founders at the top, and then in the bottom are descendants of founders. You can notice that some of them are not like the founders. Several years ago, in 2017, a friend of mine, Lindy Fullerwell, started showing me the 400 project she was putting together for new school in preparation for 2019. And then tonight, this is the second night of Greenwood, Tulsa, that actually is a rather normal experience for Black folks in the United States. We have gone through many of this edition with the multiple towns around the country, hoping we would get beyond that. However, Greenwood being destroyed did create further impact. The lawyer there was the father of John O. Franklin. I'm from Baltimore's Peter Street, and I grew up in a community of Cherry Hill, and I was grew up about 2 miles south of one of my heroes happens to be well, anyhow, we'll get to it. But this is part of the influence because I grew up in public house designed by Paul Williams' partner at one time, Hilliard Robinson. Well, that was the founders. And the founders, as you may have some idea, were part of the problem that we still have today. A lot of us don't know that about 33% or more of the Africans who were enslaved were Muslims. So we have the existence of Islam in the United States for certainly over 350 years. Chattel slavery rested on violence. Started with violence from the inception from the shores of Africa and increased throughout maintenance in the Western Hemisphere, particularly in the United States. But resistance continued from the onset. A famous resistance movement was the Eagle in Georgia, who instead took over a ship, and instead of allowing themselves to go to slavery, they, 75 of them, were chained and drowned themselves. This is a recognition by some colleagues of ours at the Smith Group. They did Recognizing Slavery, a project last year, Society's Cage. My hero, Frederick Douglass. I grew up about 2 miles south of where he was enslaved, where he worked in the shipyards, where he escaped to freedom. And fortunately, being in an old city, history was the mother's milk of our early segregated education. Frederick was one of the most photographed individuals in the 19th century. He used photography to cause freedom and liberty for Black folks. We are still managing the false narratives, but we now are making gains. Kende Wiley's statue at the Richmond Museum of Fine Arts has been installed for about 18 months. Shortly after the war, after the Civil War, this is just one snapshot of the historically Black colleges that exist in this country. There are 104. And I did not go to a Black college, but I've been influenced by it. This is a very interesting connection. Mark Twain, while at Yale, befriended Warren T. Magwin at Yale, and Magwin became a phenomenal attorney who mentored in Baltimore one Thurgood Marshall. Ida B. Wells came to Chicago around 1892 from New York because she was under threat of being lynched in her home of Memphis, Tennessee. That fortuitously strengthened her relationship with Frederick Douglass. Even though we've gone through a lot of strife and we're still keeping our eyes on the prize, there is hope and resilience. And a manifestation of that is, again, my personal experience. The family, our friends, and some of the people that still influence us. Thank you.
Walter, thank you. Many of us have talked about having a year of hardship, but there you talk about a 400-year history there, and hopefully we're starting to make some progress. Thank you for being a fine friend and great colleague. So next up, Taylor Proctor, a rising professional interested in the psychology and sociology of design, and who recently received her Master's in Architecture with emphasis in interior architecture from, and I told you what to do before, from the School of the Arts. They don't look like it, but so even Michael clapped. And he's a graduate of SCIC too, right? Yeah. Taylor?
They tell lower standards.
All right, excellent. Taylor, welcome to the PK stage. Thank you.
Architectural expression, the language of public space, analyzes the current public landscape and the human behavioral patterns resulting from that landscape to help designers develop their intentionality to become more aware of their design, teaching them how to cultivate richer interior public spaces. This project looks to decrypt the language of the city. This is a call to reimagine public space and to reestablish the meaning of public space. Public space is our right. It is not biased. It is free. It is flexible. It provides opportunity. It is indifferent. Architecture influences. The Morph scenario looks at plastic space and proposes public spaces that are flexible in form. It imagines elements and spaces that change to support human activity versus humans adjusting to or being limited by the architecture of space. Chutes and ladders access. The chutes and ladders scenario tries to create inclusive space through connectivity. This scenario provides physical access to and connections between interior public space and exterior public spaces by introducing stairs, elevators, skywalks, and underground tunnels. NOLI is inspired by the principles of the NOLI map. This scenario looks at inclusivity through transparency. NOLI peels back or removes the facade to provide physical and visual connections between interior and exterior public space. Architecture influences the culture of a city by shaping and revealing its values through tangible design. We think existing architectural elements can reveal the relationship between design and behavior and opens new opportunities for the architecture of human experience. The symbiotic relationship between architecture and society informs spaces, events, and interactions that are either positive, negative, or indifferent to the growth of a city's culture. Through the deconstruction, reimagination, and reconstruction of the physical elements of architecture, we can create new public space typologies that encourage nuance in the urban fabric. So there's a commonality in the types of public spaces, their functions, and their form. For example, plaza is to food hall and boulevard is highway. Viewing island, which is seen here, is a spatial typology where form and configuration communicate a language that encourages the conservation of human behavior pattern. One of the main social behaviors of society is to observe or people watch. These spaces provide the opportunity to do that, to provide new visual connections and viewpoints throughout the city. This typology is about transparency. It opens a variety of new possibilities for triangular interaction. Interstitial oasis. This spatial typology provides a break from the hustle and bustle of the city. The configuration and condition of this space communicates the language of relaxation, intimacy, and privacy. What can be seen as the unique in between, this typology breaks the monotonous language and design of the city, deviating from the structure of a predictable gridded city. This subtractive design method encourages breeze and excitement in the city, an air pocket in a dead form. Assembly planes. This typology creates flat, open spaces that support a multiplicity of occupational opportunities. Through the creation and distribution of open spaces, this typology encourages imagination and free thought. The flexibility of this space provides creativity and agent of change and creates a language of community ownership. This typology is about form. It is a morphological space through the simplicity and purity of elements. Transitors. Is a spatial typology where the elemental assemblage communicates the language of movement. This typology provides more varied, safer, and efficient pedestrian access and circulation throughout the city. By complex layering of pedestrian pathways, this typology is about access. It is the form of transition. Social connectors. This spatial typology is about place. By creating multi-use spaces that combine the layers and activities of the city, producing a network of culture and society. These typologies are more than street or mode of transportation. It is a major connection of the city that embodies the community and culture. PlayStation. This spatial typology encourages exploration and interaction by utilizing every surface. This typology attracts social interactions and engages the community in free play. This typology is about form, communicating a language of exchange. It uses the manipulation and undulation of elements as a way of creating captivating space. And thank you all for listening.
presentation reminds me of a really fantastic movie from the early 1970s by the sociologist William White, called The Social Life of Small Public Spaces. And some of it is filmed in Chicago, down by the Shea Plaza, which is First National Bank. And it's all about the public taking back public space in the city through accessible typologies like you described. So nice job. I'm really helpful about the future of architecture if it's in your hands. So thank you. For the last time, here's Michael Jackson tonight. So for the last time this evening, it's Michael Jackson to introduce, sadly, our final, but perhaps most spectacular presenter of the evening. Michael, keep it short. Instead, hopefully.
Thank you, Peter. Our next presenter is stipulated to ride it, so she's always performs a shot of whiskey and a Cuban cigar. So we could put PechaKucha's finest Havana cigar. I'd like to make an announcement, slightly tipsy. Trey, focus. That Trey Elder, our previous presenter, several of you lovely people have bought the Essential Situation Chicago. Yes. Trey is offering a free download, not those who pay for it. It's just a convenience. No one else is getting a better deal, right, Trey? We don't want to undermine ourselves. But you're offering everyone who's here tonight a download of a new one?
Yeah, another item on a free digital download of both records.
Wow, how about that? Thank you to all those lovely people who that lady over there who was just taking a drink. Yeah, you were very nice. I like you. She's not cheap like the guy she's sitting with. She's got a turntable. Shut up. All right. Anyway, wasn't pizza great tonight? I love pizza. What are you serious about? Well, this is the last one we can take it on. Okay. Ray, am I too close to the mic? Yeah. Yes, hot mic. How's me half profile? Okay. How many paralegals do you know that have a pair of legs that dance fiery flamenco? Castanets as wide as you care to. You'll not find anyone quite like the remarkable Sophia Sanchez. A Chicago native with a cultural background as diverse as the demographic of Albany Park, her insatiable interests extend beyond vocal talent, bewitching body movement, and filmmaking. She's also known to dabble with a multitude of musical instruments, from Moroccan banjo and bandoneon. Even her granddad's trumpet gets a dusting off now and then. If anything, during lockdown, Sanchez's promiscuous creative output increased in leaps and bounds. She made videos with co-conspirator Gilles in Mexico City, playing Bonnie to his distant Clyde. Collaborated variously and hilariously with percussionist Niels Higdon, Hindustani dancers, duos, trios, and quartets. A brilliant wordsmith and mistress of the pun, she penned, recorded, and mixed several stunning pandemic ballads, often in cahoots with her talented and bohemian husband, bassist Lou Marini. Last August, Sophia, Louis, and Sicilian drummer David, collectively known as Combo Chinotto, stopped by my place after a rare en plein air gig at some Cafe Cantante in Rogers Park. We jammed into wee hours, bathing each other in a heady mix of nostalgia and cognac. A Mexican-Romanian Anglo-Italiano summit that practically saved my sanity during the bleak summer. of nothingness. That night felt entirely like home, albeit a home for wayward expats, gypsies, and mongrels. So please, people, press your palmas together, thusly or thereabouts. Right. Exactly. Let's hear it for lifesaver and savourer of life, Sophia de Leon Sanchez.
Have I got a timeshare opportunity for you? Buckle up, guys. Thank you for that intro. I am a very busy woman. Too busy. I don't recommend my lifestyle to anybody. It will do irreparable damage to both mental and physical health. People say that I burn the candle at both ends, and they're absolutely right. You could say I'm at my wig's end. All right, so I was born in Chicago. I grew up in Old Town. That's our apartment at North and Wells. Those are my parents. Aren't they gorgeous? And that's me, thoroughly unimpressed with character. My parents are artists. My mother's a photographer, lighting consultant, expert. My father's a musician, singer of all genres. So I came from art. I was immersed in art as a child. At a very early age, they had me dancing to earn my keep. But it was encouraged not to pursue that as a career. So I fast forward many, many, many years. Now I'm paralegal. I work at Chicago County College of Law. I work for two lovely professors / practicing attorneys, Richard Clay and Richard Gonzalez. The jokes that I work for two dicks are endless. And they never get Richard Clay plays harmonica, so when we're not getting people out of jams, we are jamming at the office. So when I'm not at the office, I'm gigging a lot, usually running 2 gigs from work. I'm a flamenco dancer, primarily. I think that's my main thing. I studied flamenco for about 10 years. I've been passionate about it since I was a child. And I've performed with traditional and non-traditional bands, and it's been lovely. Shameful plug. If you want to see me, I'm performing on Fridays this month at Art Tango with PechaKucha, so be there. Okay. So when I'm not dancing, I'm also singing, because of course. I started a band with my husband, Louis Camocchinoto. It's Kinoto. It's bitter Italian fruit, so it's very fitting for us. We do jazz and flamenco and blues, and I sing in all kinds of languages. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess, but it's a super fun mess. And if you ever see us on the bill, you're going to have a good time. This is our living room and our Russell Mills 2 flat. It's also my recording studio. This is where I work. This is where the magic happens. If Louis was here, I'd be lying, because it's never that clean. Usually when I'm in the middle of a project, it's more like this, where instruments are strewn everywhere, paper, recording devices, everything is just, it's a complete chaos. That's usually what it looks like, and it's never even that clean. These are the instruments I own currently. I've acquired them over the years. It's become an obsession. They're all my babies. English concertina, accordion, gourd banjo, many guitars, dulcimers, banjo ladies. I do play all these instruments. Whether I play them well is open to interpretation. But this is what I do on my free time. I'm usually permanent up in my front room, recording myself playing all these instruments. I spend a lot of time playing with myself. So the pandemic happened, and I thought I'd be fine. You know, like this is my time. But I ended up spending my time, like most people, baking bread, recreating old paintings, and drinking copious amounts of alcohol in my jammies. So yeah, I did get out of that funk eventually. and I started creating and collaborating with friends again. And I started making videos of these collaborations, and it saved my sanity. This alone got me through the pandemic, I think, and a few other folks, I think. So these are the projects that Michael so lovingly described in his intro. So this is my partner in crime, Gilles Agniot Thomas. We connected via Zoom because he's currently in Mexico City right now. We connected during the pandemic, and we thought, let's just do some stuff because we're not doing anything right now. And it kind of evolved into a much more involved project where I got a little nuts with creativity, with some guerrilla filming in Union Station when nobody was around, and it just took off. We're like, this is a thing. We can make films together, even though we're thousands of miles apart. It's possible. So we formed a group and named it the Sophia 30. I did not choose this name. I am not that much of a narcissist, contrary to popular belief. But ever since we started the Sophia 3, we've gotten amazing artists on board. We've created really interesting videos. If you follow us on social medias, on Facebook, on YouTube, we are the Sophia 3. And you can see our series of videos. You can see the evolution of the qualities of our videos. This is the Bonnie and Clyde video that we did. I found the car, which was incredible. I just happened to have one. And it's more just a testament of the resiliency of the human spirit. Even when the world comes to an end, we can still create, we can still make things, we can still get things going. That's why I feel like my fellow presenters are absolute kindred spirits. And I look at that. We can do it. Enough about something else. Gilles, my co-conspirator, he runs a nonprofit organization called Creative Jesus Christ. I forgot it now.
Creative Jesus Christ.
Community Arts Exchange. Of all the things I had to forget tonight, my plug. Community Arts Exchange. This is their information. Rolando Palacios is our executive director. If you have any questions about this program, it's a lovely program. I'm going to go over and time out because but they're a wonderful community building organization. They build communities through the arts. They've done songwriting workshops about advocating against domestic violence against women. They're an excellent organization. So if you want to find out more information, go on, look at the back. Brown shirts, the brown shirts at the bar. So thank you guys so much. I've had a wonderful evening.
Oh, somebody's got some free booze up here. Oh, it's all gone. So that was. We're not really post-pandemic yet, are we?
No.
But as close as we've ever been to post-pandemic, that was our first PechaKucha Night. I think it was rather nicely. Game of Thrones is even more interesting and exciting than Michael Jackson's introductions. I doubt it. Martin? Fucking thank you. Addison, and can't wait to see those cards in every home in America. Trade only before I acquire one of those albums for my daughter. And nobody's allowed to leave until Trey's box is empty. Thank you. Walter Street, thank you. And you are the one who tricked me into doing something AI and it got completely out of hand. Thanks for nothing. Actually, thanks for all gangsters. Taylor, thanks. And we got to sit down and watch that William Wine movie together, right, into a public space. No thanks to Michael Jackson for all that. Were they puns? double entendres, whatever they were. Yeah. Clapping yourself does not count. Sophia, thank you for enduring that torturous introduction. I live, Sharon and I live, must be within not even a stone's throw of your childhood home. So we got to, and this is a side conversation. Thank you all. The bar is still open. I think as long as we want it to be. Thank you, Martyrs. Thank you all. Thank you, Shea. Thank you, now. Maybe Michael will take a photograph if I can kind enough to. Thank you all. Co-presenters.
Casey, gotta go to bed.
Did you not hear Mom? She said 10.